So in this video we're going to be forging some cable Damascus, and what I'm doing right here is pulling it out of the kerosene that I had it soaking in for about 8 hours. The nice thing about the kerosene is it works kind of as a flux, so it burns out all of the oxygen in between any of the layers and all that stuff and creates kind of a shell around the material, just like a flux would do. A lot of people use kerosene or diesel to do that process. Now for this, because it's my first cable Damascus, I'm going to go ahead and use flux just as a good measure here. So we put it in the forge, heated it up, cleaned it off, and then went ahead and put flux on it. Now what we're going to start doing is forging the ends down a little bit, and all I'm really doing on this step is just forging it kind of in a circle, and on the next step I'll be changing it up just a little bit. But for that one right there, it was just getting the end forge welded so that I can then do this step that we have right here, which is where I'm going to go ahead and forge it into a square. And that's going to be important later, because we're going to end up putting this in a vise, untwisting it, cleaning it, and then twisting it back up. So it's a lot easier to do that with the ends squared off, and you'll see why in a little bit. Now that we've got the one on the end done, we're going to do the same process on the part that has the bar attached to it. So we round it, clean it, and then we flux it again, and then go ahead and start shaping it into a square, just like we did on the end. The reason why this is important is because we're going to go ahead and put it in the vise, and it's a lot easier whenever we have this squared off so that it clamps down a lot easier. And this is not some fancy tool right here. This is basically a pipe wrench with a piece of metal welded to the head of it so that I have a little bit more leverage on both sides to be able to untwist this and clean it, put it back in the forge, heat it back up, and then go ahead and retwist it. Now, I'm not going to be just twisting it back to its original amount of twist that the cable came with. We're going to go ahead and twist it a couple of more revolutions past that. So we're going to do this bit of twisting that we're doing right here, which is going to give us about an extra twist past where the original cable was twisted. And as you can see, I'm still getting used to the whole using this tool and doing this process, because this is my first time actually doing something like this. So things were kind of slipping around, but once I got past that, I went ahead and twisted it a couple of more twists and just made sure that we have it nice and tight, because this is going to make the forging process a lot easier. And the reason behind that is you start twisting those strands a lot more and getting them to where they're just super tight, so that when you start doing this process, these spirals don't try and come unwound while you're forging it. And all I'm doing right now is just going around it and trying to set the weld. So I'm not swinging super hard on this. It's just nice light taps on multiple sides so that we get the weld set, so that we can start hammering harder as we go through the process. And as you can see, I'm at forge welding temp right here. You can see the steam coming off of this billet. I'm gonna keep it at forge welding temp for a few more cycles on this, just to make sure that we're gonna get everything forge welded and we have a nice solid billet. And what I'm doing on these steps right here is I'm forging it down into a square and then starting to forge it flat. So the previous little step that I did, we forged it into more of a square shape, and now we're just forging it on two sides to create a more rectangular shape. And this is where we're going to start getting our billet formed. And I will tell you, this moves real nicely and real easily. I'm so used to doing leaf spring material, so 5160 spring steel, that forging stuff like this is a lot easier because the leaf spring material, you have to put a lot of force behind your swings in order to move that. It does not like to move. It's very, very hard to work with, and you get worn out. But this moved very easily. Now, what I'm doing right here is I'm actually kind of putting bevels on either side of it because I'm trying to widen the billet a little bit. And so I'm drawing the steel outwards and getting myself just a little bit wider billet. And then what I would do is start hammering the center and bringing that out a little bit more as well, until I got as wide as I wanted it to be. And then we start flattening everything, getting it all nice and uniform thickness. So now we have our rough knife shape on here. So it's just drawn onto the top of the anvil. It's not the exact shape I'm going to go with. That's another knife that I'm working on, but it gives me a decent reference to how I want to forge this particular one. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just forging the area that is going to be almost where the finger choil is. So it's going to be at the start of the tang itself. And it's going to start giving you a division between the tang and the blade section of the knife. One of the things that you want to make sure of is that as you are compressing the steel into these little areas, that you are going back and flattening your material, because what will end up happening is you'll start getting little twists, or you'll start building up bulk in certain areas, and you want to make sure you keep everything uniform as you're compressing this. So as you're moving stuff around, make sure you're going back and you're hammering on your flats. As I've been getting used to using different parts of my anvil, I've really liked the shape of the horn for the anvil that I have now versus the Harbor Freight one that I used to use. I can use this particular horn to do so much within bladesmithing that is just an absolute necessity to have. It was one of the downsides to the Harbor Freight anvil, was it was so broad and awkward when it came to the horn that it was just almost useless. And I use every square inch of this anvil. So now that we got everything profiled roughly and got everything straightened up, we want to go ahead and try and figure out what kind of knife design we want. So what I typically do is I'll take a billet that I have right here and just put it on the sketchbook and then start, drawing a knife and figure out where I want the handle, how long I want it, and I'll typically draw something, be kind of okay with it, but think that the proportions are off a little bit, so then I'll start changing it up. And you'll see in this particular, section of the video here, I come up with a knife shape, and then I end up changing a few things that are on it. I look at other knives that I've made, and I start realizing, man, this handle, it's actually a lot longer than I need it to be. So we're gonna go ahead and make the handle a little bit smaller, a little bit shorter. That way the ergonomics and the overall size of the knife is, within the right proportions that a knife should be. And what I decided to do with this particular knife is just make a nice classic drop point knife. Try not to go too crazy with the shaping of it. I just wanted it to be a nice, classic design. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is get this cut out on the portaband saw. And I don't have to remove much material because I kind of drew this roughly to the shape of the original forged knife. So all I'm going to do is do a little bit of trimming to get the profile where I want it, but it was already pretty much there from the forging, so I didn't have to remove much. Then all we do is go over to the 2x72 with a 36 grit belt and start refining the profile. Now this was already pretty flat, so all I needed to do was just make sure it was super smooth so that the handle scales and things like that fit easier in the future. Alright, so let's go ahead and wrap this one up here. Here's a little close-up of where we're at. So we got our profile done, we got our pinholes drilled, we got it all flattened out as much as I wanted to flatten it out. And I'm really excited about this. This is going to be cool. I did a little test etch so that I could see exactly what the pattern was going to look like, and it's sweet. It's really cool. If y'all want to see what the pattern looks like, all you gotta do is, watch Sunday's video, because on the Sunday video, we're gonna go ahead and grind the bevels, do the heat treat process, maker's mark, acid etch, all that stuff. so that you'll actually be able to see what the bevels are going to look like in the finished product in that episode. So luckily, all you got to do is wait one day. But make sure you watch that video, because that's going to really show y'all what's going on with the pattern on this. And again, it's sweet. So I'm excited about y'all actually being able to see that. But guys, that's pretty much the end of this one. If y'all would, give this video a thumbs up, share this video or one of my other videos, and if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe, because when we hit 50,000 subscribers, I'm going to end up doing a Damascus giveaway. Oh yeah. Guys, thank y'all for coming by. Thank y'all for spending your time with me. Y'all have an amazing day. Y'all stay safe out there. I'll catch y'all next time.